In the time before time, when the rivers whispered secrets to the wind, and the mountains stood as silent witnesses, there was a young man named Tahoma. He was born under the gaze of the Great Spirit, his path woven with the golden threads of destiny. But as the seasons passed, he grew restless. The world beyond his village called to him, its shimmering promises luring him away from the wisdom of the elders and the warmth of his people. One morning, he stood at the edge of the sacred valley, where the sky met the land in an unbroken embrace. His father, Gray Eagle, a man whose eyes held the wisdom of many winters, placed a strong hand on his shoulder. "The path of the world is wide, my son, but the heart must remain steady," Gray Eagle spoke, his voice like the steady drum of the earth. But Tahoma, eager and untamed like a young wolf, longed for adventure. He sought riches beyond the valley, believing he could carve his own name into the bark of time. He left with nothing but his dreams and the fire of youth burning in his chest. The world, however, was not as kind as he had imagined. The city of stone swallowed him, and the hands of strangers, once welcoming, turned cold. His wealth vanished like smoke in the wind, his friends faded like shadows at dusk. Hunger gnawed at his belly, and shame coiled around his spirit. One night, he sat by a dying fire, staring at the glowing embers. His heart ached for home, for the song of the river and the voice of his father. But how could he return, broken and unworthy? Had he not turned his back on his people, on the wisdom of the Great Spirit? Yet, the wind carried an ancient whisper to his ears. The sun does not forsake the land when night falls, nor does the Great Spirit abandon his children when they lose their way. The next morning, with feet weary but heart determined, Tahoma began his journey home. He crossed valleys where the deer moved like spirits, through forests where the trees spoke in hushed tones. Each step felt like shedding the weight of his past, and yet doubt clung to him like morning mist. Would his father still welcome him? Would the village elders turn him away? As he neared the sacred valley, he saw a lone figure standing beneath the great cedar tree. Gray Eagle. His father. His shoulders, though aged, were strong, his eyes filled not with judgment, but with a love as deep as the earth itself. Tahoma fell to his knees, his voice shaking like leaves in the wind. "Father, I have dishonored you. I left seeking my own path, but I have returned with nothing but regret." But Gray Eagle knelt beside him, lifting him up. "My son," he said, his voice steady like the river's current, "a father does not love only when the sun shines. My love for you is like the mountain, it does not move with the seasons." The village gathered, the fire in the center burning high. Songs of joy filled the night air, voices rising like smoke to the heavens. Tahoma, once lost, was home again. And from the sky, where the stars blinked, like the eyes of the Great Spirit, a gentle breeze swept through the valley, carrying a sacred truth love, once given, never fades. The river's redemption. Long ago, before the ancestors' voices faded into the wind, there was a young warrior named Ahanu. His name meant "he who laughs," for he had once been full of light, his heart as open as the morning sky. But life, like the river, twists in ways unseen, and Ahanu had walked a path of regret. He had been a son of honor, a protector of his people, a hunter whose arrows flew true. Yet pride, like a creeping vine, had wrapped around his spirit. A dispute with his closest brother, Chaitin, had darkened his heart. Harsh words were spoken, words that cut deeper than any blade. In his anger, Ahanu turned away from the village, away from the people who had once been his home. Seasons passed. The sun rose and fell over the land, but Ahanu did not return. He wandered far, carrying the weight of his own sorrow. His steps led him to distant lands, where his spirit grew weary, and his heart, once strong, felt hollow. He sought peace in the wilderness, yet the trees whispered no comfort, and the rivers did not answer his pain. One night, as he sat beneath the great sky, the stars above shimmered like the eyes of the ancestors. He heard the wind sigh through the trees, soft as a mother's song. It carried a truth, one that he had long refused to hear. The river does not scorn the fallen leaf, nor does the Great Spirit turn away the one who seeks the path home. Ahanu closed his eyes. Could it be? Could he return? Would the village, would his brother, ever accept him again? At dawn he rose and began his journey back. The land had changed, or perhaps it was he who had changed. The wind no longer carried only the voices of the past, but also whispers of hope. When he reached the river that bordered his village, He stopped. His hands trembled as he touched the water, watching as the ripples danced outward. How many sins had this river seen? How many stories of loss and return? A shadow fell across the water. Ahanu turned and found himself face to face with Chaitan. His brother's eyes held the weight of their past, but also something that Ahanu had not expected. "Brother," Chaitan spoke, his voice steady as the earth beneath him. "The river does not ask where the rain has been. It only welcomes it home." Ahanu felt something break within him. The weight he had carried, the burden of his own making, fell away like leaves in the autumn wind. He did not need to beg, nor did he need to explain. Chaitan had already forgiven him. Together, they stepped across the river, back toward the village. As Ahanu walked through the familiar land, the people came to greet him, not with judgment, but with open hands. His mother wept, not for sorrow, but for joy. His father, once stern, clasped his shoulder with pride. The village elder, wise and patient, looked upon him with knowing eyes. "The Great Spirit does not count the steps taken away," the elder said, "only the steps taken home." That night, as the fire burned high, Ahanu sat among his people once more. Laughter returned to his heart, like a long-lost bird finding its way home. He was not the same man who had left. He was something more, something whole. And the river, ever flowing, whispered to the earth, carrying the story of the warrior who found his way back, not only to his people, but to himself. The path of the Thunderbird. In the land where the rivers run deep and the mountains touch the sky, there lived a young hunter named Dakota. His name meant friend to all, yet within him a storm raged. Life had not been kind to him. The drought had stolen the crops. Sickness had taken his mother, and now his people whispered that the Great Spirit had turned away from him. Dakota walked alone through the valley, his heart heavy like the clouds before the rain. He had once believed that the Great Spirit guided the steps of men, but where was that guidance now? He had prayed for his mother's healing, yet she had been taken by the wind. He had hoped for the rain to return, yet the land cracked beneath the sun's fury. One night, he sat by the fire, the embers glowing like distant stars. An old man, Wakan, the village elder, sat beside him. His face was carved by time, his eyes filled with the wisdom of many winters. "You look at the ground, young one," Wakan said, "but the answers are not in the dust." Dakota did not answer. "Do you know the story of the Thunderbird?" Wakan asked, stirring the fire with a branch. "It is said that long ago the sky was dark with a storm that would not pass. The people feared, for the rivers would flood, and all would be lost. They begged the Great Spirit to take away the storm, but the thunder only grew louder." Dakota watched the flames dance. The Thunderbird, mighty and strong, flew into the storm instead of away from it. Wakan continued. He did not fear the wind. He did not fear the rain. He trusted the Great Spirit to guide him through. And when he reached the heart of the storm, he found that it was not chaos, but power. He took the lightning in his talons and carried it back to the people, giving them fire to keep them warm. The elder turned to Dakota. "You see, my son, the storm was never meant to destroy. It was meant to give strength to those who trust." Dakota sat in silence. The words settled in his heart like seeds waiting for rain. That night, as he slept, the wind carried voices through his dreams. He saw the Thunderbird soaring above the storm, his wings slicing through the clouds. He felt the thunder in his chest, the power of the Great Spirit calling him forward. When morning came, Dakota did not stay in the village. He took his bow and walked into the wilderness, seeking the truth for himself. The land stretched wide before him, endless and untamed. His feet carried him to the cliffs where the eagles nested, where the sky seemed close enough to touch. For 3 days, he walked without food, without water. His body weakened, yet his spirit remained strong. On the 4th day, the storm came. The sky roared, the wind howled, and the rain fell in angry waves. Dakota stood at the edge of the cliff, the world trembling beneath him. He wanted to run. He wanted to hide. But Wakan's words echoed in his heart. "Fly into the storm, not away from it." Dakota raised his arms to the sky. "Great Spirit, I do not understand your ways, but I trust them." At that moment, the lightning struck not at his feet, not to destroy, but above him, splitting the sky like an open door. The wind wrapped around him, strong, but not cruel. The rain washed over him, not as punishment, but as renewal. And then the storm passed. The sun broke through the clouds, golden and warm. Dakota fell to his knees, his heart pounding like a drum. He had faced the storm, and he had not been alone. When he returned to the village, the people saw the change in him. His eyes held the fire of the thunderbird. His step was steady like the great rivers. "What did you find in the storm?" Wakan asked. Dakota smiled. "I found the Great Spirit had never left." From that day on, whenever the clouds gathered, whenever fear whispered in the hearts of his people, Dakota would remind them, "The storm does not come to break you. It comes to make you soar." The whispering wind. Before the rivers carved their paths through the land and before the stars found their places in the sky, there lived a young woman named Aita. Her name meant first to dance. For as a child, she moved like the wind, her spirit light, her heart open to the world's wonders. But as the seasons turned, doubt settled in her soul. The elders spoke of the Great Spirit's wisdom, of how the earth itself carried his voice. Yet when Aita sought answers, she heard nothing. She asked for guidance, but silence met her prayers. She watched the hawk soar with purpose, the deer move with certainty, yet she felt lost, unsure of the path she was meant to walk. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Aida sat by the great cedar tree, where the wind whispered through the branches. She closed her eyes and asked, "Great Spirit, where are you? I have listened, but I hear nothing. I have watched, but I see no signs." The wind stirred, lifting the fallen leaves into a dance, but no words came. Feeling abandoned, Aida rose and walked toward the sacred hills, where the elders said wisdom could be found. She sought to hear the voice of the Great Spirit clearly, to understand what was hidden from her heart. For 3 days, she journeyed. She climbed the cliffs where the mountain goats walked without fear. She knelt by the river where the salmon swam against the current, never questioning their direction. She stood in the open plains where the buffalo moved as one, trusting the wisdom of their path. Still, no answer came. On the 4th night, Aida sat beside a small fire, her spirit weary. She had looked to the earth, to the sky, to the waters, yet she remained unsure. The silence pressed against her like a heavy mist. Then, a gentle voice, as soft as the wind moving through the trees, stirred within her heart. "Why do you search so far for what has always been near?" Aida's breath caught. She looked around, but she was alone. Yet the voice did not come from outside her, it came from within, steady, certain. "The river does not question where it must go," the voice continued. "The hawk does not doubt the wind beneath its wings. Why do you seek signs in the world when I have placed my wisdom in your heart?" Aita closed her eyes, and for the first time she understood. The Great Spirit had been speaking all along, not in thunder or great signs, but in the quiet stirrings of her soul. She had been listening for a voice like the storm, but wisdom came like the whisper of the wind. The next morning, Aida walked home, her steps lighter. She no longer sought the path ahead with restless eyes. She trusted the guidance that had always been within her. When she entered the village, the elders saw the change in her. "What did you find in the sacred hills?" they asked. Aida smiled. "I found that the Great Spirit speaks in silence, and wisdom is carried by the wind." From that day on, when others felt lost, they sought Aida's counsel. She taught them not to chase answers in the storm, but to listen to the quiet places within. And so, through the gentle urgings of the heart, the people learned that the Gigi Reet Spirit's wisdom was always near waiting, whispering, guiding. The gift of the morning Sunday. Long ago, in a village where the cedar trees touched the sky, there lived a woman named Nita. Her name meant bear, for she was strong and steady, a pillar of her people. Yet, deep within her heart, shadows grew. Nita was known for her wisdom, but she had let bitterness take root. She carried her burdens alone, speaking little and frowning often. She had seen too much hardship, the loss of her husband, the passing of her mother, the struggles of her people. Each sorrow stacked upon the last, forming a wall between her and the world. One evening, the village gathered to share stories by the fire. The elders spoke of the Great Spirit's blessings, of the gifts hidden even in hardship, but Nita only crossed her arms. She could not see the blessing in pain. She could not find warmth in a world that had taken so much from her. Seeing her sorrow, an old woman named Tala, whose hair was as white as winter's first snow, approached her. "Come," Tala said, "walk with me at dawn." Nita hesitated, but something in Tala's voice was gentle, certain, like the wind through the trees. And so she agreed. When the first light of the sun kissed the horizon, Nita followed Tala to the river. The water was still, reflecting the sky like a great mirror. Tala pointed to the surface. "What do you see?" she asked. Myself, Nita answered. Tala nodded. And what do you feel when you look? Nita sighed. Tired, angry, empty. Tala took a small stone from her pouch and dropped it into the water. Ripples spread across the surface, distorting Nita's reflection. Pain is like this stone, Tala said. It falls into our hearts, sending ripples through our lives. But watch. Slowly the water calmed, returning to its stillness. Nita's reflection became clear again. No matter how many stones fall, the river always returns to peace, Tala said, but only if it lets the water settle. Nita watched, the lesson sinking into her heart. She had allowed pain to stir her soul, had held onto sorrow so tightly that she had forgotten how to let the waters be still. Tala smiled. Come, there is more to see. They walked to the highest hill, where the village lay below them, smoke rising from morning fires. Tala spread her arms. What do you see now? She asked. Nita took in the laughter of children, the hands of the women weaving baskets, the hunters returning with food. She saw the life that pulsed through the village, not just struggle, but joy. I see goodness, she whispered. Tala nodded. Even in sorrow there is light. Even in hardship there is love. She turned to Nita. You have spent many seasons holding your pain, but you have forgotten to hold your blessings. Nita's breath caught in her throat. She had been blind to what was before her, to the kindness of her people, to the warmth of the fire, to the simple gift of waking each day. She closed her eyes, feeling the sun on her skin, the wind in her hair. When she opened them, the world looked different. No, not different, she had changed. From that day on, Nita lived with gratitude. She did not forget her losses, but she no longer let them darken her heart. She gave her time to others, helping those who were weak, comforting those who grieved. She spoke with kindness, choosing her words like one chooses the finest berries. And when she looked at the river, she no longer saw only her sorrow. She saw the sky, the trees, and the beauty that had always been there, waiting for her to see it. The path of the rising Sunday. Before the great herds moved across the plains and before the rivers carved their way through stone, there was a young warrior named Kiona. Her name meant brown hills, for she was steady and strong, like the earth beneath her feet. But though her hands were firm and her heart was brave, she carried a secret burden, a dream long buried. When she was a child, she had stood beneath the stars and told the Great Spirit her wish. Let me be a healer, she had whispered. Let my hands bring life where there is pain. But time passed, and the world did not bend to her dreams. The elders told her that healing was for the women of wisdom, those who had walked many winters. You are a hunter, they said. A warrior, not a healer. And so she let go of her dream. She took up the bow, ran with the hunters, and became known for her sharp eyes and swift feet. Yet, in the quiet moments, when the stars blinked like watchful ancestors, she felt the old longing stir within her. One evening, an old man named Mato came to the village. He was a great healer known in many lands, his hands filled with knowledge of plants and prayers. He sat by the fire, and the people gathered to listen to his stories. The Great Spirit gives gifts to all, Mato said, his voice like the wind through the pines. Some receive them young, some receive them old, but no gift is ever lost. Kiona listened, her heart pounding. Was it possible? Could a dream once given be taken back? That night, she walked to the river, where the moon shone upon the waters like a silver path. She knelt and placed her hands in the cool stream. Great Spirit, she whispered, if my dream is still alive, show me the way. The water swirled around her fingers, as if answering. At that moment, a cry rang out, a voice, filled with pain. Kiona ran toward the sound. By the river's edge, a young boy lay on the ground, his leg twisted from a fall. Fear gripped her, but then, like the wind through the trees, a voice whispered in her heart, you have all that you need. She tore a strip from her tunic, wrapped his wound, and whispered the healing words she had learned as a child. Her hands moved with a certainty she did not understand, as if guided by something greater than herself. When the boy's pain lessened, his breathing steady, she felt something shift inside her like a fire rekindled after long darkness. The next morning, Mato came to her. I heard what you did, he said. His eyes were kind, filled with knowing. You carry the gift of healing. Kiona's throat tightened. But I was told it was not my path. Mato chuckled. Do you think the eagle asks permission before it flies? The Great Spirit does not forget his promises. He only waits for the right moment to fulfill them. Tears filled Kiona's eyes, not of sorrow, but of release. The dream she had buried had never truly died. It had only been waiting. From that day forward, she walked two paths not only as a hunter, but as a healer. She learned from Mato, studied the plants, listened to the wind and the whispers of the earth. And when the people spoke of her, they did not call her only a warrior or a healer. They called her she who walks with hope for. She had learned that no dream is ever too far, no promise ever truly lost. For the Great Spirit, who paints the dawn anew each day, can bring life even to dreams that have slept for many seasons. The voice of the cedar. Before the rivers learned their song and before the wind carved the mountains, there was a man named Elu. His name meant full of grace, but he did not feel worthy of it. Elu was known for his strength, for his skill with the bow and the spear, yet his heart was restless. Though his hands could hunt and his feet could walk far, his spirit felt empty, as if searching for something unseen. The elders spoke of the Great Spirit, of the one who formed the sky and set the stars to shine. They said he was near, closer than breath, but Elu did not understand. He prayed as the elders had taught him, spoke the words of his ancestors, yet he felt nothing. One evening, as the sun faded behind the hills, Elu walked alone to the great cedar tree at the edge of the village. It was said that the old ones heard the Great Spirit best beneath its branches, where the wind whispered through the needles. He sat, closed his eyes, and asked, "Great Spirit, where are you? I have spoken, but you have not answered." The wind stirred, rustling the branches above him. A soft voice, not heard with ears, but felt in the heart, echoed through the air. "I have always been here." Elu's eyes flew open. He looked around, but no one was there. Yet the voice remained, gentle as the flowing river. "You call for me, but you do not wait to listen." Elu's breath caught in his throat. He had prayed, but had he ever listened? He closed his eyes again, this time not to speak, but to hear. The wind moved again, carrying voices he had not noticed before: the rustling of leaves, the laughter of children in the village, the distant howl of a wolf calling to its kin. And within all of it, there was something deeper, something real. Elu's heart, once restless, now felt warm, like the glow of the morning sun. The Great Spirit had been near all along, not only in the prayers spoken, but in the very breath of life itself. The next morning, Elu did not wait for nightfall to pray. He spoke with the Great Spirit as he walked, as he worked, as he watched the sun rise and the stars take their place. The others noticed a change in him. His eyes, once searching, now held peace. His hands, once only for hunting, now helped the weak. His voice, once filled with questions, now carried wisdom. "What has happened to you?" they asked. Elu smiled. "I stopped speaking long enough to listen." And from that day on, he did not only call upon the Great Spirit, he walked with him. He lived not just in prayer, but in love, in kindness, in the quiet knowing that the Creator was never far. And when the people asked how they too could find such peace, Elu led them to the great cedar tree and told them, "Do not only speak, be still, listen, for he is already with you."